This is the Retirement Planning University podcast with Jordan Schwartz and Phillis Pulvinas.
I am your host, Jordan Schwartz, and I'm joined here today by my co-host, Phillis. Phillis, how's the weather in Phoenix today?
Oh, it's finally getting really hot, but I'll take that over back east cold and gloomy and rainy summer days any day.
You got your Boston days.
I parked that car. I sure did.
Phil, what's on your mind for today?
You know what I really want to talk about? The fact that most people, when they're planning for retirement, either drastically or somewhat underestimate what they're going to need to live on, or they think they can spend more than they actually can. And you got to get that budget right.
I like that. So what are you seeing that people are doing? Is it that, they're underestimating, like, what parts of someone's budget would they generally be making mistakes on? Do you think it'd be like utilities or fun or travel? Where do you think people are maybe underestimating that are getting them into trouble?
Yeah, so the fixed bills, I think most people have it by then.
Yeah, it's the discretionary stuff.
Yeah, it's the discretionary. They think, well, now that I'm not working, I'm not going to have to buy as many clothes, or I'm not going to spend as much on gas. But like I always tell people, every day is Saturday. What did you do? Work your entire life to twiddle your thumbs and watch TV? Maybe you want to scream at Fox or whatever your favorite news station is. No, you want to get out and do things, I hope, right? Even travel. What does that really cost if you've never taken a trip? What's your style for traveling? Or, if you've never taken a trip, let's say you want to go to Europe, what does that really cost? Do the legwork up front so you have a good idea and figure it out.
I like that. So the fixed income, that's pretty much set, right? That's simple. It's the discretionary stuff. It's the, going to Starbucks in the morning to get a cup of coffee, or it's the, let me go shopping this weekend because I want something new versus going shopping in my closet, so to speak. So it's basically getting a hold on the discretionary stuff. I was looking this up. The average expenses of an American is about $5,500 a month. Now, I think for most retirees that we'll meet with, usually it's between maybe $6,000 to $8,000 on the low end, and then the high end could be maybe $15,000, $16,000 a month. One of the first maybe useful places we could go to is someone figuring out, rough back of napkin math. Don't take this as advice because everyone's plan is different. But how much would someone actually need in an investment portfolio to be able to generate the level income that they're got? Maybe what we could talk about is the 4% rule.
First of all, you have to figure out what are your fixed sources of income.
Yeah.
What are those? And then whatever you have saved, is just take a safe rule of thumb is to take 4% of that. And whatever that is what you have to spend. Mm-hmm. But, a lot of times, Jordan, don't you find that people forget about paying taxes as well? In their budget? Yeah, they don't think of it because, their paycheck, they've always had their taxes taken out.
Yeah, I think for someone who's listening to this, if you're just trying to get your arms around it, the first thing is just go make a budget. If you just Google budget, there's a million different online budgets that you can look at to kind of a template. And then to your point, it's making sure that you're not leaving out the bigger expenses, but we pay them one time a year, so we don't think about it. To me, though, a couple things that are interesting is when you talk about fixed income, what does that mean? So if someone's got, let's say, Social Security or a pension or an annuity, that's their fixed income. What I always look at is we're solving for what's called the gap, right? And the gap is the difference between your income and your expenses, right? So Phil, if your expenses are $8,000 a month and your fixed income is $3,000 a month, your gap is $5,000 a month. Where I always like to look at is figuring out, okay, we need $5,000 a month of income, right? So if we take that over 12 in a year, what?
$60,000, right? Yeah. Divide that by 4. What does that come out to, Jordan? You're faster than me.
So let's just say if we look at basically every $1 million of assets, if we look at the 4% rule, 4.5 or 5, somewhere around that range, that's going to get you, let's say, $40,000 a year, right? So what if you needed $1 million of income from if you had $1 million in your investment portfolio and you were taking 4%, that's $40,000 a year. We go off of this math, someone's going to need about $1.5 million of income from their investments to be able to support and sustain that $5,000 a month. Now, keep in mind what we're not including: inflation, taxes, all those different variables in there. So that's why you got to do a comprehensive analysis on this stuff because look at inflation, Phyllis, a 3-4% rate of inflation. What is that, every 20 years, your expenses double just about? If someone's trying to solve for that gap, The thing I always like to do is just get a sense of clarity. Okay, figure out what your budget is. How much money do you actually need? That's step number one. Number two is going to be, okay, if I'm trying to solve for that gap, okay, I need, let's say, $60,000 a year to make it work for me. Okay, I need $1.5 million. Now, if you don't have $1.5 million for retirement or a million or whatever that number is for you, it's got to be figuring out how long will that money last for? And then do I need to start talking about how to spend my money a little bit more intelligently?
Absolutely. But, I just got to throw this in there, that 4%. I like that because instead of 5% or 6%, which I've seen, safe rate of withdrawal, because that allows for all the hidden expenses that people don't see. It pads it. And you really want to pad it. You really do, because you don't get a do-over in retirement. I just had to throw that 2 cents in, even though, I know that we're conservative and we really make sure that people are not overpaying and that we wring out every dollar and cent from Well,
everyone's goals are a little bit different, right? So if your goal is slowly running out of money, right? Or some people's is leaving a big legacy. And to me, clarity is king in this particular example, where sometimes I think people, they don't want to think about how much they need to spend per month, because sometimes confronting these things are scary because you don't always get the answer that you want to know. But once you just have a sense of clarity and a sense of certainty, you can kind of chart the path moving forward. So in this case, we're looking at basically how much are we spending? How much do we need per month? If I'm someone and I'm running into a situation where, okay, I'd like to cut back the amount of assets I have. I'm going to run out of money long term. I don't want to go back to work. I don't want to do any of those things. I want to stretch this as long as I can. Now we're talking about the discretionary stuff. How can we start to make those smarter decisions where we're not running into a situation where we are running the risk of running out of money?
I'd say Starbucks is one. Just about everybody I talk. Starbucks is an expensive deal. For what? A cup of coffee that you could, make a lot cheaper and still have the socialization. But have you ever added up? I'm just very basic, so I don't have that problem. I have a million others that I spend my money on, but it's not that. But I do find with a lot of people, that's one place that they could cut way back on. I don't know, different brands of food, I suppose, or I don't even know today. You don't clip coupons as much as you used to. But I don't know. What do you think, Jordan? What are some things that you've seen pretty?
Well, I think with most people that are having a hard time with figuring out what they're spending, if I asked someone, okay, what are you spending per month? How much is it actually? Most people don't have a great grasp on all the things.
That's so true. Can I give an easy tip though? Easy tip. I'm sorry, but what you really want to do is you want to look at what did you bring into your household every month. After you've taken out your 401k, after you've taken out your taxes, what comes in the door? And then at the end of the year, how much have your savings accounts outside of your 401k grown? And that tells you your budget. That's what you got. Divide it by 12. You got a budget. You're not spending less in retirement. Would you agree with that, Jordan? Most people don't. Very few, unless you haven't saved enough.
I mean, with a lot of people where their goal is potentially to improve their quality of life in retirement. So that is definitely a misconception that a lot of people have, is that they're going to need less money in retirement, where, I mean, it's not a fun conversation if you went out to dinner Monday night to say, okay, Tuesday, well, we already went out to dinner this week, so we can't go out to dinner again. We save money to think less about money, not to think more about money. But if we go back to this idea, the first thing I'd like everyone to do out here, if you are having a hard time getting your budget where it needs to be, chart 1 month. Go look at everything you're spending in a month. Yeah. And you'd be surprised at all the junk. I know when I was starting off and I was working to build some financial discipline, I did that. I still do it to this day. Every single month, I write down every single thing that I spend. Every single month, I still do it. And I think for anyone out there who's having a hard time budgeting, it's really helpful to do that, because when you're thinking about buying something, you're going to know, I got to write that down later. It's like counting calories, right? That's why when
I write it down, forget it.
Oh, yeah. That's why Weight Watchers was and still has been very, very successful, because people knew they were held accountable to writing that down. So that'd be the first thing. And then a lot of y'all are going to figure out, there's a lot of junk on here I'm spending money on that I don't need to be spending.
Yeah, that I could spend on something that I really want to do. Yeah.
Or you could bank that money for a trip later in the year, because there's a lot of stuff that we think that we need, but we don't need. In the Western society, people think they need 20 pairs of pants or 30 pairs of shoes or some of these ridiculous numbers.
Hey now.
I like clothes too. I like clothes too. I know I'll get in trouble with my wife too. But yeah, there's a lot of things that we think that we need that we don't need. It's something as simple as when you leave a room, turn off the light. Or if you're going out of town, turn up or turn down the thermostat, where it's almost more like what it is outside if the weather permits. Or to your point, it's looking at Starbucks. A big thing a lot of people do. All these subscription services, a lot of businesses have gone to a subscription-based model because it's more predictable recurring revenue. And a lot of people, I think, are using those subscriptions and they forget that they have them. Even like a car is almost subscription-based now. It's 0% finance, but you have a payment on that. And the name of the game with retirement, I think, is keeping your expenses as low as possible. Well, not having a mortgage is ideal, but not having a car payment, or not putting your not putting a TV on a monthly payment or something like that. If you don't have the money for it, don't buy it. If you do have the money for it, then you can buy it.
What a concept. And that is refreshing to hear someone as young as you say that, right? A lot of people, in my age group feel like that. Although I see in this day and age, they've come along and they're spending more than they realize they are. It's just the American way. You're right. Pay attention to what it is you're spending and then pick and choose.
Well, it's a credit card society, right? It's literally, even the government. We want more money, we print more money, right? And it trickles down to the everyday American where, what is it? I don't know what it is. I think the average American doesn't have $1,000 in an emergency fund,
Oh my goodness.
I don't know what the number was, maybe not that, but there's something, it's very significant like that, where for someone who's listening, who's trying to either get a handle on building for retirement or is trying to take this pile of money and make sure it lasts as long as them, successful retirement is about discipline. You can still have fun in retirement. It's just making sure that you're making the necessary decisions where you don't run the risk of running out of money. If you haven't prepared for retirement, that doesn't mean that you can't retire. It just means you may have to be a little bit more disciplined than someone who over prepared for retirement. And that's not fun, but it's horrible when you see someone going back to work in retirement.
It starts with eyes wide open. That's the first step. If you don't have your eyes wide open with what you're spending or what you're going to spend and what your money can do for you, laid out facts, not blue sky. I never tell people what they want to hear. I tell them what is, and padding. It starts there. And then once you have your eyes wide open, if you need to curtail certain things, there's a lot that we can cut out. I know I could in my household. And Jordan, you write it down, but I bet your wife maybe doesn't.
She knows I write it down too. So I'll always ask her about something if I see it on there. But it's good. It helps us both stay accountable and be able to save for retirement. And, her and I are getting close to feeling like we could if we wanted to be able to do that. And that's where I think there's that FIRE movement for I know a lot of millennials like that is, financially independent, retire early. I'm not going to retire. I love doing what I do, but basically just get in control of your life, and whether or not we like it. And I love it. We live in a capitalistic society. America is the best society in the history of civilization. And this system works, and it can work for you or it can work against you. And if you get roped up on the consumer mania of trying to keep up with the Joneses or trying to do those types of things, you're going to get in a trap. Like, you look at people who drive a really nice car or live in a big house. A lot of those people are overextended. A lot of them are overextended.
Yeah, it makes my stomach hurt. Yeah. So many times people my age, when we were raising the kids, had a car payment. That was a lot more than my mortgage payment.
Yeah.
I don't know how they do that. Yeah. So things like that, you really got to pay attention to.
What do you think about encore careers? Because let's say someone figures out what their budget is. Their assets don't support that budget. They can cut some stuff, but they're like, you know what? No, I want to travel, or I want to do this. What do you think about an encore for someone? Because I don't know if that has a dirty word necessarily, but I think it could be helpful.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. You think about it today. So someone retiring at 65 could live 30 years in retirement. I don't know about you, but if I'm not learning, I'm bored. So you don't have to do the same thing you did before. You might do something fun where you're just talking to people or recreate yourself, make a few bucks, make it flexible. And there are so many ideas today. But I think, first of all, you got to be contributing if you want, you die if you don't contribute, in my mind. And you got to keep your brain sharp. So an encore career, is awesome if you need to, but know it going in. So it's like you choose to do it, not have to do it. And that's eyes wide open. That goes back to the reality of what you want it to look like. And I'll just throw this in. If you're married, you got to get on the same page. You got to have that conversation, figure out what you both want, even if you're going to do a loan together, right? And spend money on different things. It's got to be part of the budget.
Yeah, it's being on the same page. And like, as an example, my mom has a little Etsy store that she sews and does quilting, and she makes things. And that's a fun little encore career for her. And that to your point, Phyllis, is where you're doing it because you want to, not because you have to. And I think that's the distinction, that if someone's like, okay, I want to travel a bunch in retirement, but you don't necessarily have enough investments to be able to support that, that could be your travel money, right? You can do different types of things like that. And it's hopping off of the corporate rat race where, in today's American pace, it's a lot of work and it's fast paced. It can be very, very stressful. But if you can kind of get off of that, one of my clients works at it's a store that sells spices, and he absolutely loves it. It gets to socialize, it gets him out of the house. That's fun, because what did it used to be? Didn't it used to be, when Social Security was first created, wasn't it like on average likelihood of someone living 5 or 10 years into Social Security? It was like nothing.
Yeah. Nothing. You got your gold watch, you went home, you turned on the TV set, and a few years after that, you were probably gone.
Yeah, in today's day and age, with modern medicine, I think a lot of the actuarial tables say people are living into their ladies, and gals are late 80s, men are younger 80s. That has a massive, massive impact.
I think that's about to change too. I think that's going to get longer. I always tease people when I talk about it. There's not enough Botox on this earth to keep me around well into my 90s. But yeah, it's very possible that we could live a lot longer. That's why, keep the brain sharp. And who wants to just... there's only so much sitting or hobbies, at least for me. Maybe I'm talking for me. I'll always have to have something going.
I think a lot of people get bored, though, pretty early in retirement. Maybe you take a 6 months to a year's off, and then you kind of get recharged, reset. And then a lot of my clients will say, what next? What do I want to do next? And there's this misconception that, when you hit retirement age, like to your point, you can always learn a new skill or learn how to do something later in retirement. And if it benefits you financially and you need to do something financially, figuring out, how can I bring in some income to be able to do the types of things that I want? Because there's a time where people slow down in retirement. You start getting towards your late 80s or mid 80s, late 70s. It's going to slow down. But again, another misconception. People think that they need to spend less money in their later years. Well, health expenses can be more, going to the doctor, those types of things. That's not the case either.
No, I've had that conversation so many times. Unless you've really got leverage on your money, which most people don't for custodial care or health care, the money that you were spending on travel during the go-go years, you won't spend as much on that in the slow-go and the no-go years later on, but you certainly will spend it on health care and then some. So yeah, that is a big misconception. I'm glad you brought that up, Jordan. People have got to understand that.
I really like your point of the spouses being on the same page, if you're married, because there's something to be said for if you both have a common mission and a common objective, right? If one person wants to save more money and the other person wants to spend more money, there's always going to be that tug and pull. What's number one reason for divorce is money. Is that correct? I think it's something like that.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're out there having a conversation with your spouse or partner, significant other, making sure that you're on the same page, that to me is step one, because if you've got a vision for where you want to go and they're the exact opposite direction, no matter what you do, you're never going to be in sync.
Yeah, you're never going to have the budget accurate. Yeah, and it's as simple as things like you could be on the same wavelength. Yes, we want to travel, but how you want to travel. Right? Do you want to go to a 3-star? Do you want to go to a 4-star? And what does that actually cost?
You want to fly or drive? Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've seen that. I've seen that play out many times where the discussion has got to be had as we're putting together a travel budget. Once
Yeah.
it's had, it's a great thing. But if it's had afterwards, then it's conflict, which is unnecessary after you've done the heavy lifting, as I always say, save for retirement.
So maybe the first place we start with is getting some clarity on how much are we spending per month. The second thing we do is figure out with that 4% rule, and there's a lot of different tools. Please don't use this as advice. You can use it to obviously talk to an advisor or professional to make sure that you're looking at things correctly, but figuring out, do the amount of assets that we have, does it support our expenses after like a social security, a pension, those types of things? If it doesn't, what can we cut? Is there anything we can cut? Or is it maybe we need to look at an encore career or something like that? To me, the number one thing is I've seen it before. You meet with someone and they are about to run out of money. And they're I know it's the worst. It's the worst. And they're talking to you like, help me fix it. But if someone's withdrawing 10, 15% from their investment portfolio per year, there's no way that money's going to last as long as them. That's where, I think sometimes as an advisor, I'm not there to be someone's friends. I'm there to make sure the retirement goes well. And if they need to spend less money, that's fine. But they need to be told that, but also going through and looking and seeing, I don't ever want anyone to run into a situation of running out of money, right? The pain of discipline is far less than the pain of regret.
So well said. That's so true. Again, it just starts like, be realistic. You don't get a do-over. You may want to have an encore career, but you don't want to have an encore career. That's such a bad feeling. And probably have saved enough that if you just look at things realistically, you don't ever even have to think about that.
And if you do have to do an encore career, find something that you love. Find something that actually gives you passion and gives you energy and doesn't take away energy, because a lot of people have not prepared well for retirement, and that happens. But to me, the bigger issue is if you have to work an encore career, at least find something that doesn't feel like work. I think most people have a passion or something that they enjoy, gardening, or like my mother-in-law loves to garden, my mom likes to sew, or you can find something that at least is fun for you, where, you have to work, but you get to work. You don't have to work.
A very good friend of mine, believe it or not, just something like this. He loves kids. He always has. And his wife spent a little more than she should have. And he found himself in a situation where she's still going to continue to. He sold his business and he needed more money. He drives a bus with kids and he has a blast. He does. They all call him Mr. Ira, and he has a great time, and he looks forward to it every day.
That's awesome.
Yeah, whatever it is, get out there, have fun.
Yeah, that's
it's a safe driver. Yeah, kids are in good hands. Whatever it is, something like that. Yeah, he enjoys it.
I like that. Let's end on that. Let's end on a positive there. So figure out what you need to spend. Make sure you got enough to support that. If you don't, figure out some of those decisions that might be harder decisions to make, but it's going to help make sure that you don't run the risk of running out of money. Phil, till next time. Hey, if you all want more content just like this, make sure that you all subscribe to the pod. Check out all of our awesome content. And Phil, I'll see you soon.
Hey, great.
You've been listening to the RPU podcast with Jordan Schwartz and Phillis Polvinas.